There's this thing that happens to me when I'm standing in front of a hot stove, looking at the burner turn red.
Touch it.
Where something that feels like it comes from inside and outside my brain at the same time says,
press your face against it.
And I don't want to, not even a little. In fact, the thought of it horrifies me beyond the telling of it. I can hear the water in my skin sizzle as it melts to the stove, and I can smell it cooking like meat. And even through that, I can hear it say,
press your hand against it.
I've had intrusive thoughts connected to my OCD for as far back as my memories go, or at least as far back as my emergency room records do. The first time this happened to me, I was 7, maybe 8. I walked into the kitchen, my mother was on the phone, turned away from the stove, the long cord curled around her as she scribbled something down, and I knew exactly how hot the stove I was standing in front of was. She had warned me. She didn't realize what I was doing until she heard my screaming and smelled my hand cooking on the burner. That thing, that voice inside me, has never gone away. After I watched Dexter for the first time, I started calling it my dark passenger, but I'd already learned the name for what was happening to me from therapy. These were intrusive thoughts, TM. That moment, cooking my own hand on the stove, was an example of an intrusive thought winning. If you were to look up intrusive thoughts winning today, though, you'd see the exact opposite as the first, million examples.
My intrusive thoughts won.
Now I'm trophied up, I'm saying bing, bop.
I might buy an iMac.
Does what she wants and she looks cool doing it.
2, 3, release them. I wish that I ever knew.
Anyway, I saw a video about someone getting their hair trimmed and they called it their intrusive thoughts winning, and I've been thinking about it for 2 years. I'm fake Dr. Caelan Conrad with a real fake PhD. I've been putting the O, C, and D in OCD since 1993, and your bangs look great. But they were not an intrusive thought winning. Here are some examples of intrusive thoughts that I, personally, have had over my life, some until today. I don't want it to seem too dark, so let's make it a little more lively with some music and animations.
Eat it. Eat your razor. Just lay it on your tongue and swallow it. Just, come on, jump down the stairs. You don't even have to jump. Just keep walking. Walk. What's a nice spoon? Scoop out your eyes. Just slide it behind your eye and just pop it out. You can just pop it. Come on, walk off the balcony. Just walk straight. Keep walking. Don't stop. Walk. Stop cutting that carrot and cut off your fingers. Cut off your fingers. 5 down, 5 to go. Just go 5 by. You didn't check the oven good enough before you turned it on. You cooked Goose alive. Goose is dead. You killed Goose. Murderer.
You want to come sit? Just a little sampler. An app shareable for the table. This is Goose. Here are some examples of intrusive thoughts that I've seen online. I should get super cute bangs. I should get a tattoo I want. I should buy this thing I like. I should eat some snacks from the grocery store before I get home. I should dye my hair a fun color. And yeah, you should do all those things because those are all things that you want to do and will likely be a good experience for you. And if not, you have no lasting consequences. Your hair grows out, everyone with tattoos has a few mid-impulse tattoos, and you just went grocery shopping. Why shouldn't you eat half the chips you bought on the way home? It's probably only 5 chips anyway. All of these are absolutely impulsive thoughts, yeah, but an intrusive thought is something you don't want. It's intrusive because it's not coming from you. Even if you haven't clocked it so specifically, you yourself have probably seen people say that they let the intrusive thoughts win because they impulsively cut their bangs or went to Taco Bell at 2 a.m. and got an extra wrap. It's all over social media and it's framed like it's harmless, even fun. But it's not what real intrusive thoughts are like at all. Real intrusive thoughts aren't fun, quirky ideas or impulses. They're often upsetting, frightening, or disturbing, and importantly, they go against everything you value and believe about yourself. And that's why so many of my intrusive thoughts have to do with harm, because at my core, the last thing I ever want to do is harm myself or others. But I still think about pressing my hand against the stove and letting it cook every time I turn it on. For me and many other people, intrusive thoughts are one of the core symptoms of OCD. And for people with OCD, acting on intrusive thoughts or letting them win is the absolute last thing they want to do. And when letting the intrusive thoughts win is people's entire cultural reference point for what intrusive thoughts are, and they actually have thoughts that are disturbing, embarrassing, or horrifying to them, the shame and fear can be overwhelming. Because if everyone else is thinking about getting a taco and you're thinking about putting your dog in the dishwasher, it's really easy to feel like an absolute monster, to feel like a worthless, terrible person. But those feelings are not deserved, and they keep people from getting actual help that could actually change their actual lives. I did. When I was in 8th grade, I read a book series that happened to have a character with OCD, Everworld, by the author of Animorphs, and I immediately saw myself reflected back in a way I never had. Nobody talked about OCD back then. I didn't know that it was a real disorder, and more importantly, I didn't know it was treatable. And it is. OCD is highly treatable with the right kind of specialized therapy, and that's true regardless of what your intrusive thoughts focus on. And that's why I'm extremely lucky that NoCD partnered with me on this video, because I know what specialized therapy did for me. NoCD is the world's leading provider of specialized OCD treatment, and it's covered by insurance for over 138 million Americans. All of their licensed therapists are extensively trained in a type of therapy called ERP, or exposure and response prevention. It's the most effective treatment for OCD, and NoCD therapists guide you through it in live virtual sessions. You can even message your therapist between sessions for support, so you're never facing OCD on your own. I think for me, that was the hardest part, feeling so alone, so othered, so monstrous for thoughts I didn't even want. And nobody else should ever have to feel that way. If you've ever struggled with unwanted thoughts, it's worth looking into how NoCD might be able to help. Go to nocd.com and book a free call with their team to learn more. That's nocd.com. Now, having intrusive thoughts does not mean you have OCD. Many other disorders come with persistent intrusive thoughts or images. Other anxiety disorders, PTSD, depression, postpartum depression, eating disorders, so many come with intrusive thoughts. If you don't happen to know what OCD is because your entire understanding of it is contextual, derived from the media you've seen, OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, is an anxiety disorder characterized by two things that its name sort of vaguely gestures at, but doesn't get exactly right. Obsessions, which are unwanted, intrusive, recurring thoughts or fears that cause significant distress, and compulsions, which are repetitive behaviors or mental acts performed in an attempt to neutralize that distress. The critical thing that differentiates it from what OCD means culturally and online is that the compulsions don't actually work. They provide temporary relief, sometimes only seconds of it, and then the obsession comes back, often louder than before. The relief is a trap. The more you perform the compulsion, the more your brain learns that the obsession was a real threat worth neutralizing, and the more urgently it sends the obsession the next time. It is a disorder that runs on the fuel of your own attempts to escape it, and it can be horrible to live with. It ruined my childhood. But OCD is also extremely varied. There is no single form of OCD, and that's part of why it goes so frequently undiagnosed. People compare their symptoms to the cultural shorthand and find that they don't mesh. My OCD is not about what most people think, cleanliness. Although it's also not about cleanliness. It's about order and everything in its place. It's about numbers and symmetry, and at the center of my world, like the sun everything else orbits, is the number 5. Things have to happen in 5s, or multiples of 5s, or they aren't finished. Things have to be symmetrical in a way my brain accepted, or they feel wrong in a way that is difficult to explain or describe. And wrong is me putting it mildly. It's a feeling that makes me want to peel my skin off. As a kid, I would have a full-on, hands-flailing, screaming meltdown about something being slightly off. I could not stop myself from walking up to another kid's desk and straightening their pencil, even during a test. Any attempt to do so could have me shaking and panicking. I got in trouble a lot. I got called ableist slurs a lot, sometimes by teachers. But this video isn't about me and isn't specifically about OCD either, so if you want a video like that, let me know in the comments, because if people think that would help them, I'll do it. I have no problem talking about my OCD. So yeah, a big part of my OCD was having these intrusive thoughts, but having intrusive thoughts doesn't mean you have a disorder at all. It could happen to you. Most people have intrusive thoughts. They're usually shorter, rarer, less intense, and much less frequent. But it would be totally normal to see people actually discussing real intrusive thoughts under a hashtag like hashtag intrusive thoughts. But mostly you don't. Because here's the thing about intrusive thoughts about getting bangs. You want the bangs. You might be scared they'll look stupid on you, and they might, but you want the bangs. I do not want goose in the washing machine. I do not want to cut off my fingers. And more than any of that, I do not want to watch Frasier. The intrusive in intrusive thoughts is, you guessed it, load bearing. It's got a big, huge load on its back. Because without it, it's just a general thought. I'm not here to be the language police. ACAB, ETC, language evolves, slang is dope. I'm a ghost doctor, not an English teacher. I've long since dealt with the fact that one of the most destructive forces in my life, OCD, is used in casual conversation to mean quirky or organized or washes hands after pissing. But there's something really othering about finding the only term you have to describe a real and awful thing that happens to you has now been watered down to the point that when you use it, people have no idea what it actually means. And worse, they have the wrong idea. If someone truly believes that having intrusive thoughts is thinking, I should make pancakes at 2 a.m., and you tell them that your intrusive thoughts are, I should push my mother down the stairs, all of a sudden, even when describing that it's something you don't want to do, they will assume that in some respect, you do want to do it. Because intrusive thoughts now mean something I want to do but is impulsive. This has happened to a lot of terms that marginalized people relied on. Like gaslighting used to be a term that described a particular form of abuse. Now it just means lying about anything in any way. Sometimes not even lying, just disagreeing. And if you want to explain how you were psychologically abused in that specific way using the word gaslighting, many people will think what happened to you is no more harmful than being lied to. Oh, sorry about your husband doing that. I'm still mad my mom gaslit me into thinking Santa was real. Like, the core part of intrusive thoughts is that they are ego dystonic, which just means that they aren't in alignment with your values or how you perceive yourself. In contrast, ego syntonic thoughts are things that do feel consistent with your other thoughts and your values. Intrusive thoughts are usually something your brain cooks up that are so ego dystonic that they cause immense, immediate distress. So, not like cutting your bangs. More like being a pedophile. One of what I can imagine is the worst forms of intrusive thoughts for people with OCD is what is colloquially called POCD, pedophile-themed OCD. People who suffer from this may have thoughts like the following. Fear that early experiences were signs of suppressed pedophilia. For example, when I was 10, I had a crush on and kissed a 9-year-old, which means I like 9-year-olds. Fear that having been a victim of childhood sexual abuse condemns one to be an abuser. Fear that positive emotions towards children could be sexual in nature. For example, a woman feels overwhelmed with love for her son and wonders if the love is somehow romantic or sexual. False memory obsession, such as obsessive concern that a pedophilic act occurred and was somehow blacked out of memory. For example, did I molest that little boy I walked by earlier and not remember? Why am I wondering? I literally can't imagine everyone joking about their intrusive thoughts like, my intrusive thoughts told me to get bangs, my intrusive thoughts told me to get a new tattoo, and then someone saying, my intrusive thoughts told me I may have molested the boy I didn't touch on my way home. Even without POCD, someone saying, my intrusive thoughts told me to eat this bag of Oreos, lol, and replying, my intrusive thoughts told me to cut off my feet and cook them. Only one of those people is describing an intrusive thought, and yet despite them prefacing it with it being an intrusive thought, it would do nothing to mitigate the judgment, because nobody there knows what an intrusive thought even is. So while most people will have intrusive thoughts in their lives, actual intrusive thoughts, these aren't those. 94% of people have them. So it would be real handy if people actually knew what they were. And you know I love to give a handy. And by handy, I do mean prevent a lifetime of trauma, stigma, and depression. So many people think they are actually monsters, worthless, violent, sick, depraved monsters until somebody finally explains that these thoughts are ego dystonic by nature. Because once you know what an intrusive thought is, that the thoughts you're thinking are specifically and objectively against what you believe in, what you value, it changes things. You're able to almost turn it around on itself. Well, I'll speak for myself. I was able to do that. When I realized the thought of cutting off my own hands or tongue or ears was only occurring to me because I didn't want to do it, it removed so much of the anxiety, fear, and shame surrounding it. I spent a lot of time these last few years thinking about how I functioned before therapy, after therapy, between therapies, therapists, But these days, I actually find it difficult to follow the threads back between what was OCD and what was, I now believe, to be undiagnosed autism. Maybe in my brain, they can't be differentiated in the way other people's can. Maybe I have a special combination of the two. OCD. But having recently sort of accepted that I'm autistic, even if I can't afford the thousands of dollars to get my membership card or whatever, it's reframed some of the struggles I've had in life. Or it's helped explain them. When I was a child, selective mutism was frequent for me, for several reasons. But most disruptively, when someone called my name. When that happened, I had to wait 5 seconds to reply. Exemple, I would be sitting in class and the teacher would call my name for attendance, and I just had to count it out in my head.
Caelan, Conrad.
1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5.
Caelan, Conrad.
But if I was interrupted, I had to start again, and I could not explain what was happening to the person staring at me waiting for my response.
Caelan, Conrad.
1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi.
Caelan, Conrad.
1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi.
Caelan.
I got sent to the principal's office a few times. Kids called me a cute little R slur to go along with the fags and girls and gays that were whipped at me in the halls. I was lucky enough that my father's health insurance covered therapy, and doing years of it starting at 12 completely shifted things for me and allowed me a sense of control. And a huge part of that was just learning the truth. What came from me and what didn't. What was my personality and what was OCD. What was real and what wasn't. And the most instrumental thing for me in doing that was being given the language to identify and name what was happening to me. So, seeing people not only prevent other people from being able to do the same, but make it more difficult for me. I mean, clearly it bothered me because here we are in my shitty little apartment I can't afford, and I'm yapping about it. And that's because I think it's important that we squash that stigma that says that your intrusive thoughts define who you are. But in a way, they sometimes do, just in a backwards way, because the research consistently finds that the content of the intrusive thoughts, your nature, in people with OCD does reflect their values, in that it's the antithesis of them. It is a reversal. People with harm OCD who have thoughts about hurting themselves or others are markedly gentle. They are thinking about violence because it is terrifying to them. It is abhorrent. People with religious-based OCD, known as scrupulosity OCD, tend to be people who actually find faith to be very important to themselves. The OCD targets you specifically. It finds the thing that would hurt you most, the most unbearable thing you can think of, and it presents it to you as if it is your crime to pay for. Which, let me say, is a horrible design. When creationists talk about intelligent design, I literally piss myself laughing, pants-soaked with nature's delight, because there's nothing intelligent about my design. Evolution has done some questionable work here, but I think it's clear we aren't working with an omniscient creator when I can't run a bath without thinking of boiling myself like a lobster. If you have OCD and goodbye. If you have OCD and intrusive thoughts, remember that you're being shown or told something that only defines you in that you're against it. So I'm going to tell you what I needed to hear, and maybe what you need to hear, and maybe what I need to hear. The fact that this thought makes you feel sick is not a warning about your character or worth. It is the opposite. Your brain is a melodramatic little biological toaster generating slop you never would have signed off on. This is a known bug. You did nothing wrong. You were not the first person this has happened to. There is a name for this, a treatment for it, and you can absolutely overcome it. I made this video in my head so many times, and every time it's different. It wasn't until I realized I had to stop chastising and just educate that I was willing to make it. My impulse was to go with my shower argument version, where I'm extremely correct and righteous and correct and clear, and everyone who ever made a Bangs video feels appropriately chastened, and the world is better and we can all move on. And that video is just as bad as Bangs. It's a bad video because it's more complicated than that, because there's a lot happening here. Because there are some videos that actually do show intrusive thoughts, and I think those do so much good in terms of reducing stigma and promoting education.
So, I was gonna show you.
Soft spot. The baby has a soft spot. You hit it.
I didn't.
You did. You hit it. You bumped it, you scraped it, you bruised it. Now she'll be bad at math.
And I think
to myself, what the fuck?
Normalizing people talking about their intrusive thoughts and making content about them is good in my book. Silence is deadly. Silence prevents solidarity, community, and it propagates shame. And I'm okay with there being a softening and more widespread use of clinical language and terminology when it comes to mental health. But this use of the term doesn't just soften it, it inverts it. It is a lie. Take, for instance, the word trauma. When someone says, ugh, that movie was traumatizing, they often don't actually mean that. They often don't have any long-standing issues. They don't have any of the actual telltale markers of trauma. It wasn't a snuff film. They just saw a sad scene where a character they liked died. But in that case, while the precision behind the term is being lost and the concept itself is being diluted, it's still moving in the same direction as trauma would. The casual use is still describing something in the neighborhood of trauma, at least. But when intrusive thoughts becomes a fun impulse, that's not a dilution, but a complete inversion. It becomes egocentric. And to be clear, this isn't the fault of the people using the word casually. They learned it through social media in this form. I'm not assigning blame, but the effect it has is real, regardless of intent. And I think the pain it can cause people who are struggling by othering and demonizing them is worth the time it takes to address it. Because we matter. That pain matters. Because if you're a young person with real intrusive thoughts and you go looking for what other people your age's intrusive thoughts are, and you find people talking about cutting their hair or buying something expensive, it's easy to just think, oh, that's not me. I guess I really am alone in this. Maybe there isn't even a word for the kind of monster I am. I also find it interesting that so many of these impulsive thoughts winning posts are about buying things. We've taken these consumer decisions, choices that we make, and we've contained them in this little bubble of being briefly and endearingly out of control. My intrusive thoughts won, not, I made a choice, not, I wanted this and so I bought it. Instead, it's something happened to me, overcame me, beat me in a battle of wills. I basically had no control over my actions at all. And I don't know. I just find that interesting. That we've taken the language of the most involuntary, unwanted, and horrifying mental experiences and tied it to the most voluntary, wanted, and consumer-driven decisions we make as if we have no agency. Must buy more. I didn't buy this car, my intrusive thoughts did. I was simply a bystander in my own transaction, a victim of my own transactions even. Which, apart from the bastardized terminology, is funny, I guess. I love buying shit too. Just the other day I bought 2 bags of bread flour. 2! But it wasn't my intrusive thoughts winning. It was my egocentric desire for homemade veggie burger buns. And they were fucking amazing. I think we should all probably just be a little careful about this and maybe consider who benefits when we start to believe that we have no choice in what we buy, that spending our money on expensive things is something that just happens to us. I don't think people are intentionally trying to push overconsumption or whatever when they do this, but I am suggesting that when clinical language gets absorbed into consumer culture, it tends to get absorbed in ways that serve consumer culture. That earns itself a good, sturdy, raised eyebrow at least, right? I'm not asking for a PSA at the end of every My Intrusive Thoughts 1 video that intrusive thoughts are harmful. I can't make anyone start using the term correctly. I can't even make them stop using it incorrectly. But I can do my part to educate people on the reality of it, and maybe if I do, they'll follow their conscience on this one, and the world will be a little better of a place. We currently live in a world where many people with OCD don't understand what they're dealing with, because OCD itself is so diluted by the media, social or otherwise. When you think OCD is liking a clean house and intrusive thoughts or I want to cut my hair tonight, it's so hard to ever realize you're not a freak who is alone in the world. OCD is one of the most discussed and misunderstood disorders, in my opinion. And the data doesn't disagree that people often go extremely long between the onset of symptoms and receiving a correct diagnosis. Studies used to cite an average of 14 to 17 years. Now it's around 13. 13 years. 13 years of not even understanding what's happening to you. It's torture. If you think you're experiencing something like what I've described today, please talk to someone. This is why I partnered with NoCD, so at least I'd be able to give one recommendation you don't even have to leave your house to access. Because OCD requires specific therapies like ERP, which have been proven to be effective, and reaching out to someone not trained in dealing with your specific flavor of disorder or issue usually isn't the best path. Therapy can be expensive, and wasted therapy is, well, it's really discouraging for the patient in so many ways. It can also be a long wait. We live in a world where if someone wants to know what OCD is or an intrusive thought is right now, They go online. And right now, if they were to look that up, the definition has cute green bangs and a $300 5-wick candle. Both of which I also wish I had. It hurts literally nobody and helps everyone when we use the words we mean. And saying my impulse is one is, in my opinion, both funnier and more accurate than my intrusive thoughts one. Unless you're talking about cutting off your own toes or pushing a kid in front of a car or whatever. Then go off, queen, I guess. I have a horror audio drama coming out this year that takes the real dangers of AI grooming and pushing people to hurt themselves or others and forces people to examine if they'd be so dismissive of it if it were a person causing the harm. It's called Welcome to Isaiah, and the crowdfunding for it went amazing, and you should follow the channel on YouTube and social media so you can stay up to date when it's released. And actually, if you're a fan of the channel, please do. It would mean so much to me. It's in the description and up here somewhere. Watch the trailer, subscribe, leave a comment. Apparently, I don't know if you've heard, but the economy is like bad. I've had like $400 in patrons leave in the past 5 months because they can't afford it. I don't remove them from the Discord or anything because that would be fucked, but it does eat into my ability to eat. So if the economy isn't killing you specifically, please sign up for my Patreon. I'm currently working on a few investigations, so if you want to follow along with those and get secret information not available anywhere else, you can sign up for a membership on Patreon or YouTube and see them happening live on my members' Discord. Please do. My tax bill this year is about to send me into an early grave. Like, actually, I think I might just walk into the ocean if I keep seeing my debt go up as soon as I pay any of it off. Sharing the video, even to your own email, tells stupid YouTube that this video is worth watching. So after liking and subscribing, do me a cute, huge favor and do that. Check out my podcast, Respect the Dead, where we talk shit about dead people who suck, like Fred Christ Trump, Charlie Kirk, Elon Musk's granddaddy, the racist who made Dilbert, and sex offender Coco the Gorilla. But next month for Pride Month, we're talking about gay people who didn't suck. And we're doing double the episodes. We got Matthew Shepard, Sylvia Rivera, Howard Ashman, and a secret fourth one. Check it out. Those episodes are important, but tough. I also have merch. It's cute as hell. Look at it. Something tells me you look so good in it. Bear my load. Bearing shirt and hat. Thanks again to No CD for sponsoring this video. Okay, love you. Stay gay.